Hi, and welcome to episode 16 of the Quality Talk podcast with me, Prashant. I'm trained in media, communications, and journalism, and I create this podcast every week where I talk about things which matter to us, be it something from the world of news, health and well-being, or society and culture. In today's episode, I wanted to discuss a topic which piqued my curiosity recently. Lately, there has been a lot of talk about how a vegan or a vegetarian or a plant-based diet could help us prevent certain diseases and keep us happy and productive in the long run. There was also talk about how staying away from meat and becoming a vegan or a vegetarian can keep us away from serious illnesses and infections, including the one caused by COVID-19. And this got me thinking about the bigger picture, which is what I intend to talk about in today's episode. Can our diet and what we eat determine how happy we are in life and who we become? First things first, let's get the basics right. You and I both know that when it comes to food, there are certain ground rules which hold true no matter what. There's plenty of good quality, trustworthy medical evidence to suggest that certain food items, when consumed in excess, are harmful for us. If someone, for example, is relying too much on junk food that has an excess of sugar or trans fats, for a considerable amount of time, their health and well-being, both physical and mental, is very likely to be affected by it. This is no longer a myth. The impact of excessive reliance on junk food is something that has been established as being harmful for us for a long time now. Remember way back in 2004, the American documentary Super Size Me showed us what might happen if we relied excessively on junk food. Any misconceptions or doubts we might have had about how healthy or unhealthy junk food is were laid to rest there and then. In fact, going by strictly medical or scientific information, over-reliance on heavily processed foods is one of the main reasons why we have a growing obesity epidemic spreading across many countries in the world today. In Australia, where I live, it has been estimated that obesity rates have been rising since the 1990s, and currently around 67% of the population is affected by it. Obesity affects 1 in 4 children, an increasing number of adolescents and adults. Those who are overweight or obese are more at risk of developing other diseases like type 2 diabetes, heart conditions, and even mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. So it is highly unlikely that if one is overweight or obese and dealing with physical or mental health conditions, that they are genuinely feeling happy or optimistic about life. On the opposite end of the spectrum are those who are obsessed with health foods and healthy eating. These are the people who are constantly wary of what they consume and its impact on their body. Many a times, this obsession with their weight and what they're consuming in each meal is also very likely to lead to an unhappy state of mind. Most of all, being extra careful about everything you eat at all times is mentally exhausting. It drains your energy because one is too focused on every bite and how many calories it has and what are the ingredients of it. And I'm sure you can appreciate how taxing this can be on one's mental and emotional well-being. So in a nutshell, obsession and excess of anything, be it junk food or health food, does not serve our personal happiness and well-being. It does not make us a happy individual. We've all heard that saying, excess of everything is bad. And it very much holds true for the food we consume and our attitude towards it. So now that we've covered the basics, let's look at another side of this question. It is often said that people who are cruel to animals and meat eaters are very likely to suffer from illnesses. With what is happening in the world right now, this statement could not be timelier. There was talk of unusual viruses and bacteria spreading across the human population and causing disease and death because we are so ruthless to animals. Some even said that this is nature's way of restoring balance and punishing us for our cruelty to animals in how we butcher them and treat them as our food, our commodity. I don't know for sure if there is well-founded truth in the form of scientific evidence to back this claim. But what I do know is that this belief of cruelty and kindness to animals has religious foundations. In some religions like Hinduism, which I grew up with, vegetarianism is believed to be and taught to be the best option, because that is when one is not being cruel to animals. In fact, animals are considered as our allies in this world, and so we should not be treating them with cruelty and considering them to be our food or our commodity to use. If we follow this pattern of thought, one might be led into believing that becoming a vegetarian or even a vegan is the more humane option. This realization itself can lead to a sense of internal calm and greater psychological reassurance that one is doing the right thing. One might even seem like the morally upright person for choosing to be a vegetarian or a vegan. But this is an entirely individual process. This is an entirely subjective choice with very little, if any, objectivity to it. I can say this because there is no evidence, there is no science behind the claim that people who are cruel to animals or who eat animals are less or more happy in life than their vegetarian or vegan counterparts. In the lead up to this episode, I researched and came across an article in Psychology Today by a qualified psychologist saying that there is no basis to claim that being a vegan or a vegetarian can make one happier. In fact, there are studies which hint at just the opposite. Several studies conducted in different parts of the world have tried to establish a link between a vegetarian diet and depression. They have found that people who follow a strict vegetarian diet for a long period of time are more likely to suffer from depression than those who eat meat or are at least semi-vegetarian. Although this has been the finding, there is no further or in-depth scientific explanation as to why this is. Researchers have suggested several possible reasons, one of them being the burden of the moral responsibility that vegans and vegetarians bear, knowing that cruelty to animals exists in using them as a food source, something their omnivorous counterparts choose to be blissfully unaware of. But having said that, it is also true that many people in vegan or vegetarian diets continue to feel happy and function as productive and optimistic people. It is not true that all people on a vegan or vegetarian diet are depressed, much like not everyone who is an omnivore is going to be happy and optimistic their entire life. So now that we've settled this side of the question about the relation between food and happiness, let's for a brief moment turn our attention to the foods we all know are going to make us feel happy and better. Among these are what we popularly call comfort foods. Although each one of us might have our very own list of comfort foods which make us feel safe and happy, but speaking in more general and broad terms, food items like dark chocolate, bananas, berries, certain kinds of fish like salmon, oysters, beans, apples, and walnuts, all of these are known to have certain components which can help us in feeling happier. This has been proven by science. And the presence of these food items in our diet indicates the presence of nutrition, something many of us are aware of but do not necessarily follow consistently. At the end of the day, our relationship with food and how it makes us feel is complex. It's a relationship that is layered and evolves over time. There is no truth to suggest that omnivores are better off than their vegan or vegetarian counterparts, and vice versa. There is no truth in saying that if one has been cruel to animals as a child and ate meat, that this person is going to grow up to become a serial killer. Instead, staying away from these extremes, we need to step back and evaluate our own relationship with food, what it means to us, and why we choose to eat what we eat, and the choices we make when it comes to our food. Are they aligned with who we are and who we want to be? That is the real essence of food and us. Much like everything else in our life, food is also something we can choose to consume wisely and consciously in a way that nourishes our body and mind, in a way that helps us lead better lives and be better versions of ourselves. That is the parting thought for this episode. As you all might know, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. I create new episodes every week, and I will be back next week with another episode talking about something which matters to us. Until then, have a wonderful week, stay safe, and stay healthy.